I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Stan Fichtman. He's the project director at the University of Hawaii, and we were blessed to come across his story a few years ago when he wrote something called Alone in Paradise as part of a special project called Living Hawaii. We convinced him to take that story from text to the stage, and he is going to share his story tonight about life's realities and how that can affect one's home. Stan Fichtman.
First of all, just standing here in the shadow of Doc Rock and his performance here, just getting kind of chicken skin, actually. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Aloha. Aloha. See, you guys did it the first time right. My name is Stan Fichtman, and this is my story about home. Please forgive me, I'm going to pull out my note cards just in case I make a mistake. This is the story about two people, Joanne and Stan. In 1966, at their various locations when they were working for Northwest Airlines, their bosses called them in and said, "We're going to need to reassign you to a new place." The place is called Hawaii. So in August of 1966, they eagerly packed up their bags, got on board an airplane, and flew to Hawaii. They both came not just for a job. They also came to start a new life. They saw Hawaii even before that they got assigned here as a place of healing and as a place of rejuvenation. They left places in the mainland, places of judgment, places of hurt, where even family had hurt them. They both arrived in Hawaii, my mother as a dispatcher and my father as a mechanic. My father would walk around the airport at Honolulu International Airport and go to all the offices, and he would stop off once in a great while at the dispatch office, and he'd stay a little bit longer when Joanne was there. Soon enough, they would move away from the airport and they would go to great places for dating, the Queen's Surf, as well as they would take their little VW Bug and ride it up Pali, and then they would coast down the Pali after the engine overheated. Soon enough, that moved from romance and dating to marriage. And in 1968, they married at a little small church on Waialae Avenue. And in turn, when they got married and they set up their first home in Makakilo, they started what would be considered a mini version of the Brady Bunch here in Hawaii, a year before the show started. Let me tell you the cast of this Brady Bunch. There was my sister Rose. She came over with my father, Stan. She was already 18 at the time and ready to go to college. So she attended college at Chaminade University, up at Waialae Avenue area. And she would meet her man, Bob, who was a chemist and was getting his bachelor's in chemistry. They would get together, drive up the Pali in the same VW Bug, and coast down just like my parents did. And soon enough, they fell in love and they got married. Right after that, they would have their first daughter, Rosie, and my parents' first grandchild. That must have been an interesting time for my mom because I don't think she was ready to be a grandmother yet at 35. I was born in 1974. And my brother, who came over to Hawaii with my mother when he was 4 years old, would attend elementary school, middle school, and high school here in the state of Hawaii. He met his childhood sweetheart and high school sweetheart, Tammy, and they would get together, drive along the Farrington Highway at ridiculous speeds, but they would too fall in love and get married and have their son, David, in 1985. My family was a bustling family. We had members of our family who were born in Hawaii. Their roots were starting to be driven into the ground here. But then the economic opportunities for my parents that they saw in 1966 when they first came over, they were not being made available to my siblings. Before I even knew it, my sister and her family had already left Hawaii. Around the middle of the 1970s, Bob, Rose, and Rosie left Hawaii and they went off to Southern California, where they would start living in a small community called Laguna Niguel. Now it's a pretty big community. And they would start their route driving there into the ground in Southern California. My brother-in-law was a recruiter for hospitals, and my sister now became a reservation agent for American Airlines. My brother, who graduated from high school in 1979, went off to college in the mainland for a couple of years, but came right back. And he decided he was going to try and go to school here in Hawaii and attend the University of Hawaii and take astronomy and physics, amongst other noble professions. But even those highly regarded disciplines were not good enough for my brother to be able to stay. So after a few years of trying, and after a few years of trying to make a way here, with all the expenses that were here, he too, and Tammy, and David, packed up and left. They went to San Diego first, and then my brother and family went up to Oregon, where my brother now is a GIS specialist for the County of Klamath in Klamath Falls, Oregon. And my sister-in-law is a nurse. And their two sons, both born, one born in Hawaii and one born in Oregon, are now young, strapping young men, calling Oregon their home. My parents, though, never wanted to leave. They saw still Hawaii as a place of intense love for them. And even when my father was reassigned by his new employer, Lockheed Aviation, and became an engineer for a project over in Guangzhou, China, and even when we all packed up and left in 1989 for that 3-year commitment, Hawaii was still our home. We would come back on Christmas times, and my father, being a very smart man that he is, made sure that his income taxes were paid to the state of Hawaii so that we could keep our residency. In 1993, we came back to Hawaii. But the Hawaii of 1993 and the Hawaii of 1989 were still very different places. Economic opportunities were harder here. Most of my friends who I went to high school with while I was here in Hawaii were already gone. They had moved off to the mainland. But still yet we persevered. I went to college, got my bachelor's degree in 1997. And then I was able to bring over another member of my family, or a person who I would want to marry as a member of my family, Sasha, who I met in China while I was living there. She came over, we got married, and in turn, we had our first daughter, Rachel, in 1998. But at that time, Sasha saw what was the writing on the wall. She would get gigs, international marketplace, maybe a tour guide company, but none of them really sufficed for her. She really wanted to go higher. So, with my daughter in tow, in 2006, she too would board an airplane with my daughter and leave, never to come back. She went to Michigan State University in Lansing, got her PhD in mathematics, and now is a mathematics professor over at Boise State University. My daughter, she's now a sophomore at Boise State University, and they call Idaho their home. For my mother, she would never leave, and she is still here today. In 2010, she was stricken with cancer, and she died. And my father asked that my brother and I take separate urns and spread her ashes in the places that she loved. A bluff overlooking downtown Honolulu and Diamond Head in Makakilo, as well as that place, the Queen Surf. So that just left my father and I. My father was turning 90 years old at the time, and he's a spry man. I wouldn't put anything past him. But he too knew that the time had come for him to leave. And so he packed up, and after 46 years of living here, a place that he saw as a place of healing for him, he too had to leave. He left for Los Angeles and now lives with my sister in Laguna Hills. So that just left me. And I thought to myself, I can't leave here. There's memories here that I have in me. I was born and raised here. I remember the black snow of cane burning over the Ewa Plains, and it would drift down into the Makakilo area, of where I would run outside and I'd clap my hands and make my hands blacker than soot. I remember when I was a kid, I went over to Castle Park. If any of you remember that place, go over to the Water World area and go get some shave ice over there. That was the best shave ice in the world because that rainbow color, oh man, that was great. The sand between my feet, or even the smell of pikake, of a wild bush that was growing outside the back of my house. These memories were inside of me, and I dearly hoped that Hawaii would respond, and it did. Since graduating with my master's degree in the University of Hawaii in 2000, Hawaii has decided to keep me here. I'm blessed by that. Every time I was needing to get a new job, there was always one available. Always one with better pay, better opportunities for me, better ability for me to use my mind. And I'm blessed by that also, that it also found me the new love of my life, my wife. Lee is a member of a family that has been here between 3 and 4 generations. Her grandfather served in the 442nd. And her roots here are deep too, 3 to 4 generations. My family here has been here for 2 generations. And I'm praying to God that I can continue to keep those generations going here in Hawaii with my wife. Because truly and dearly, Hawaii to me is home. I look at my family, and I look at the way that my family has grown here like a banyan tree. The trunk of the tree is my parents. They came here to Hawaii in 1966 and buried deep, deep roots. Roots that you can't blow over with a hurricane in Hawaii. The branches stretch out, and there are 3 branches. Although connected to the trunk, they stretch out, and their roots that are coming down are stretching into the ground. My brother, of course, in Oregon. My sister, of course, in California. But my roots continue to bury deep in the place that I only call home. And that place is Hawaii. Mahalo.